Guys, the DOS is back, and this time round I want to take you deep into the mind of a visa officer so that next time you apply for a Canadian study permit, you know how to play like yourself. But before we start, I want to let you know that I'm not an immigration lawyer, so what I give you here is for information purposes only. There are also many of you who are my faithful followers who have been asking where I went. In the PhD journey, it reaches a point where you decide that the PhD needs to get out of your way. So you go beast mode until the PhD is done. So officially, the DOS is a doctor. PhD done. So let's get started. First, you need to know that the visa officer is biased towards denying you the visa. And this is not even about you. The visa officer has a quota that they have to work with. They must not exceed this quota no matter what happens. And the number of applicants is always more than the quota. As such, they want to accept the most qualified people within the quota. So what do you need to do? You need to be doing a defensive game. You need to be on defense mode until you click submit. So you need to know that the visa officer is always playing the devil's advocate and always looking for reasons to reject you so that they cannot exceed their quota. So despite their biases, the visa officer is still required to act within the law. So even if they have a quota, they have to be careful not to reject you without a justifiable reason. They have to have a legally justifiable reason to reject you. And this is not based on their feelings. They know they risk being sued, and the law does not care about their biases. The law does not even care about the quota that they have. So they have to work within that law. So if you can prove in a Canadian law court that the rejection is unfair, they will be asked to review it. And this means that they will have to look at all the details that they considered and show that those reasons that they used to reject your application or deny you the visa are actually justifiable within the law. The court cannot, however, ask them to give you the visa. The court can only ask them to reconsider your application. So this calls for you to be careful not to reveal red flags that they will rely on to reject you. Stay with me here because I'm going to give you examples and how the visa officer provides the legal grounds for rejection. Remember, all visa rejections must be grounded in the relevant law. So I want to show you the things that they use or the red flags that they pick that may make them reject you, so that next time you are applying, you can play a defensive game as though you are already in a court of law defending yourself against an already made decision. There are only two weak links in any eligible application that can be used to deny you a visa. That is the failure to prove sufficient funds, and two, failure to prove temporary intent. But before we get into these details, what really is an eligible application? An eligible application will tick all the eligibility boxes. So initially, there is a pre-screening that is done by the computer itself, which if you don't tick all those boxes, then the computer will not let you apply. That is the first thing. But even after passing through the computer process, you have been found to be eligible for that particular visa, there are some things that are still required of you. Your letter of acceptance needs to be valid, meaning it has been given by a designated learning institution or a DLI. The account statement is clear and has sufficient funds. That means you have provided sufficient proof for the funds. And you also have a valid and eligible passport, meaning the passport has been given by a recognized government, and it has sufficient pages for them to put the visa. The passport also needs to have expiry date which is later than the specific duration that you're going to take in Canada. So those ones are tick, 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 tick. Once you tick those things, there are still reasons that could get you rejected, and I want to take you through them. There are some things that could still make you be inadmissible. You could be inadmissible into Canada if you have the following. Maybe a previous breach of immigration rules, like overstaying your visa. There are also rules that determine what you should do in Canada when you have particular visas. Maybe you have a visit visa and you ended up working, and there are records to show that. That may get you to be inadmissible, or you may have a rejection. The other thing is if you have a complicating connection with a band group or a militia, or maybe a military service that you took to an enemy country. Maybe the country is in war with Canada and you are part of that military. So basically you could be a spy. So they may not admit you. You may have also participated in some non-violent activities. So maybe you have a pending court case, or maybe you have a pending issue, criminal record that you have not cleared. So these are things that can make you inadmissible if they find them out. Let us start with the elephant in the room. Almost everyone struggles with the proof of funds, because most of the time when we are getting into these applications, we still don't have money, and most of the time there is someone who may support us, or maybe we depend on selling some assets, or maybe our parents decide to support us, or we have a scholarship from an organization that is known to do this. So in many instances, people provide bank statements to prove funds. But one of the biggest issues is that you provide a bank statement with recent unexplained deposits. That one is a red flag. Remember, the visa officer is looking for these red flags, and once they pile some of them that are sufficient, they can use them to reject your application. What I'm showing you here is a case where an applicant was rejected because they presented bank statements of a stepbrother. But the stepbrother's bank account had large deposits that were so recent, and they were not explained anywhere in the letter of explanation. There were no documentations to show that this person had legitimate sources of income. So this is something that the visa officer can think that the applicant is just trying to game the system. Look at what this person says here. There is no direct proof of the sponsor's financial support on the file. I note multiple bulk deposits, but the provenance is unclear because there are significant number of cash deposits. You know, sometimes you may have done a fundraiser. So people deposit money in your account, and you need to declare this. You need to show official some documentation that are convincing. Maybe you show them a case where a photo of an invitation card, and maybe photos of people gathering to provide those funds, or screenshots of WhatsApp group where those funds were raised and how they were raised progressively. So this can help you to show that the money that you are going to use for this work was crowdfunded. This was given by friends and relatives who wanted to support your studies. But this person just provided a bank statement with so many deposits, and the visa officer in the mind thinks that this person thinks that I'm not smart. So the visa officer will reject this kind of application because they think that you are trying to game the system, get accepted, and refuse to leave Canada. In fact, they will stop there and say, okay, assuming that there is no other option, this person only had a bank statement from themselves. In many cases, applicants need to provide their bank statement and the bank statement of the sponsor. If you only provide the bank statement of the sponsor, then they will depend on the bank statement of the sponsor alone. And if that one is found to be fraudulent or has some red flags, then your application will be denied. This applicant here is another case of failure to prove sufficient funds. And this one is different from what we showed, because in this case, the funds are sufficient, let's say, but there is no proof of relationship with the sponsor. That means there is no proof that the sponsor has a decided motivation or a decided commitment with a proper motivation or a verifiable motivation to sponsor this person. If this person is your uncle, then you need to provide details that show that they are your uncle. Documents, official government documents. If there is no proof of relationship between you and your sponsor, then that is a big red flag. It is a serious red flag. The visa officer will think that this is just a random friend you picked to use the account statement, that the names, even if the names are the same, it doesn't help. You need to prove with birth certificates that links you to the relative. If you say someone is your mother-in-law, provide your marriage certificate and their national ID. Once the visa officer sees those two, they will see the name of your mother in their national ID and the name of that person in the marriage certificate. That they know that that is the only link that ties you. And of course, your mother-in-law has a motivation to support you because you live with their daughter or with their son. The other thing you need to know is that proof of relationship is not the only way, because sometimes you may be funded by an organization. So if you are funded by a non-organization, that organization needs to provide a letter. Now, in this case, there was no proven relationship with the sponsor. The person provided the bank statement of an aunt. The aunt to the sponsor's PA studies, as per the sponsorship letter, is provided. No documentation provided an established family link between the applicant and the sponsor. You see what based on the documentation on the file, the limited information demonstrating the nature of relationship between the applicant and what appears to be the financial sponsor, I have concerns that that third party funds would be sufficient and available to the proposed studies. So this person cannot be sure that that third party will avail the funds from their account to the applicant because there is no proven relationship or motivation that this person can rely on that those funds will be available. Remember, the government there is a law that requires them to show that the applicant proved available funds, not just funds, available. So if you just pick some bank statement somewhere and you think that it will be used, if the visa officer suspects that there is something like that, it will be a red flag that can be used to justifiably deny you a visa. Look at the law that they are citing here. For the reasons above, I have refused this application under this law. Remember, all the regrets, all the rejections and refusals will always cite a specific provision of the law that they are using. So assuming that you provided a bank statement from someone, but you also added yours because there are some costs that you may want to cover by yourself. Maybe your uncle is providing for your fees, but you are dealing with the living allowance or living costs and travel costs. You have provided a budget. Let's assume you have provided a budget detailing your travel costs, maybe a return flight. You also have given a budget on your living expenses, housing, clothing, school supplies, and all these things. Then you have also provided a budget on that is there for tuition and any other costs. Remember, whether you provide this budget or not, the visa officer will have something to deal with because the government has already provided the minimum living allowance required for you to be in Canada for 1 year. And this is required. Even if your budget doesn't add up to it, they will still use it. So currently that minimum required living allowance is $20,000. So once you have that, they will add tuition cost. If the tuition is, let's say, 15,000, then you need to have a minimum of 35,000 Canadian dollars available to you before they can admit you. So this person now needs to look at the applicant's bank statement. So here they say that the personal bank statement of the applicant shows savings that are insufficient to cover the costs of proposed studies, travel, and living expenses. Based on the financial documents submitted, I'm not satisfied the applicant has sufficient funds to pay for the living expenses for the proposed studies. So remember, this person first gave the bank statement of the stepbrother. The visa officer already ruled that out because of some unexplained deposits that happened there, and they cannot tell where the funds came from. The applicant also failed to explain where those funds came from. Remember, the letter of explanation is optional, but in this case it is mandatory because you have something to explain. So you can't assume that it is optional and you ignore them. The visa officer determined that a mandatory minimum tuition deposit was paid. However, since the school fees for the first academic year were not paid in full, I have concerns that the applicant does not have access to sufficient and available funds to support the proposed course of study and associated expenses. Remember, this person even had some tuition fee deposit. So despite having paid some deposit, the visa officer still denied them the visa. Why? Because whatever they provided as proof of funds had questions, it had red flags, and therefore whatever remained was not sufficient to cover for the remaining tuition and the remaining living costs that had been declared either by the government or in the budget given by the applicant. Look at what the visa officer continues to say. Weighing the factors in this application, I am not satisfied. It is a very personal thing. You are to convince this person as them, not as the government. You are not convincing the government. You are convincing one person, just one person, that this thing is really legitimate. The person is not satisfied that the applicant will depart Canada at the end of the period. Remember, this person is now raising a different matter. The matter here was that the applicant had insufficient funds, but now the person doubts if the applicant really wants to study and leave Canada after study. And that brings us to the next and the very serious matter of what we call proof of temporary intent. Now, the other big reason why people get rejected is failure to prove temporary intent. This is when you fail to satisfy the visa officer that you will go back to your home country after finishing your studies in Canada. And there are many things that could make this person think that you are not going to go back. Maybe you have no personal assets that tie you to a home country. There are many of us who only have a SIM card as the only thing registered in their names. So at least register a business. It may cost a little money, but if you register a business, even if the business is not making profits or even if it is not running, but you have at least a certificate of incorporation, they may consider that. Or maybe tax returns for that business, even if it is nil returns. It doesn't matter. Nil returns means you made no profits. So don't worry about it. Just start something. that can be said to be registered in your name apart from the SIM card. The other thing is when there are no emotional ties, very strong family ties. Maybe you have your spouse that you are leaving behind. Marriage has never been that important so important in somebody's immigration. There are children you are leaving behind, or there are parents who really depend on you. Maybe the parent is sick, or these parents have these parents could also have assets that you are entitled to as one of their children. So if your parent has a big estate, maybe some land or something, you need to include that. You need to include the title so that these people can know that you are not coming from a suffering space to come and stay in Canada forever. If your father or your mother has some personal assets, it will be good to show that you are entitled to take care of, to inherit this estate. And you could also say that you are going back to your home country to help your father or your mother manage that estate. Remember, your father having 20 acres of land is very serious, because you are not required to give the value of that land. But the visa officer cannot decide and say that that land is in a ticket. They don't have that information. But if they know that, they can use intuition and say, based on the size of the land, it is a good thing that you have this wealth that may tie you to your home country. They take this very seriously. So in the mind of a visa officer, you are someone who is coming to Canada and you need to prove that you will go back. So if you don't show things that can force you to go back, then you are in problems. So let us look at why this person was actually rejected based on these details. The first thing you can see, the visa officer is declaring here that I'm not satisfied that you will leave Canada at the end of your stay as required by the law. They always base these reasons on law. They are not taking chances because they know you may be there to prove them wrong. Okay, what are the factors they used? Your assets and financial situation are insufficient to support the stated purpose of travel. This person first is saying that they are touring Canada. You know, there are some people who are busy telling us that they want to support some causes, but they are already behind on child support. So if you are already, your entire clan cannot support themselves, and then you are saying that you are touring Canada, you are committing more than $40,000 to tour Canada. Nobody will care about that, because they will say that you don't even have money to support yourself, and you want to commit 40,000 or maybe 20,000 to tour Canada. Somebody will think that that is not serious. But if it is a study permit, then they know that this is an investment on yourself that has a possibility to give some returns. So leave alone the tourist case. Let's now focus on the study case. So if you look at this, they say that your current employment situation does not show that you are financially established in your country. Well, this person is still in problems because they don't have sufficient resources to show that they can sponsor themselves to Canada. I know this really disturbs people, but this one is normally a case when somebody is having a tourist visa or something that it is not investment in themselves that is likely to bring returns. But let us go to the next thing that now hit the last nail on this applicant's coffin. Look at this. They say that you have limited employment possibilities in your country of residence. You look at that. Now, this person may have taken a course that did not avail them some employment opportunities. But when this person looks at them, they are getting into another course and they have not explained in the application how that course is going to get them into the system so that they can be employed. This is the reason why people provide something called the study plan in their letter of explanation. Because that study plan backed with a CV can show that this person studied this course, they are still advancing in their career, and they are likely to get this job based on what they have said as part of their study plan. For instance, when I was coming to Canada, I showed that I had taken a master's in engineering, which was majorly in artificial intelligence. I told them in the letter of explanation that Google and IBM had set up research offices in our country, in Nairobi, that will likely require people like me when I finish my PhD so as to run their research lab. And I showed them that Google was actually looking for this kind of researchers, and some of those positions had not been filled for several months. So once I showed that, it means that having a foreign qualification would set me apart from all my peers in Kenya. That was a good show that I have employment possibilities in my country after my studies. So the biggest reason here is that this person did not show those kind of details. And then they say you have provided insufficient documentation to support your host's income assets. This person also depended on somebody who is going to host them. But the person going to host them, there is nothing provided about this person that shows that they have capacity, the financial might to support them. And therefore, to finish this thing, you need to know that apart from ties to home country, you need to show that there are things about your country that would make you advance. So you don't need to look at Canada as this home of opportunity. Look at your country as the home of opportunity, and you don't need Canada for your career progression apart from the fact that you want an education which Canada provides better in quotes than your country. But you need to show that the opportunities in your country are way better after you get this Canadian education. That is something you need to show that you actually don't need Canada, apart from the fact that they have good universities. But if you make Canada look like it is the best place to stay and you don't want to go, then you have a problem. The other thing is that when you are writing your letter of explanation, you need to show that you have value that companies look for in your country. You have a decent education and you are working to improve it. You have skills that you have already, and if you improve them in a particular way, then these skills are going to give you a chance in the economy that you are coming from. So be careful not to present your country as a bad country in your visa application, because that alone is going to mess up your application. Don't play the opposition politics in your visa application. All the best.